Shalom and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining me today on Deep Dive Live, number 41. Wish it was still 41. Anyway, that's not the point. I do want to say shalom and welcome to all of you. And today we will be jumping into Matthew chapter 14, verse 1, where John, unfortunately, meets his unfortunate end. I will be reading out of the New King James Version of the Bible, and we'll be working out of the blueletterbible.org web-based service. I did it right. Yes! Yeah, that's one out of, well, we don't want to talk about that. Anyway, but it is free. They do have an app that you can get for your phone or your device. But it will just be working on a New King James. So if you have that, you'll know exactly where we're at. If you have a prayer request or question or comment or anything like that, always feel free to throw those up in the chat or on the comments in the rebroadcast. If it's something a little bit more personal in nature or something that might take a second to explain, feel free to send that directly to me at my email address, which is tgikquestions@gmail.com. That being said, before we get started, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you and praise you for the day that you've given us. Thank you for the opportunity to come forward and to study your word once again. I pray as we look through these scriptures, I pray that you open up our hearts and our minds to better understanding who you are and how we can better love you and better serve you and how we can shine our light to this lost and dying world. Guide us and direct us in all that we do, and we ask all these things in the name of your Son, Yeshua, we pray. Amen. All right, so let's get ourselves started here. Let's get rid of my big old ugly face and get down to our scripture here. Now, at this time, Herod, the tetrarch, heard the report about Jesus. Now, we're not going to get into which Herod this is, but just so you know, there's like 5 of them. So when you see the word Herod, you don't want to necessarily attribute it to all of the same person because it was, him or one of his kids, and they all kind of went by that name. It's kind of stupid. So, very confusing for those of us who you really need their entire name, like Herod the Tetrarch that gives this title. You need it because just Herod's just not enough. They were all bad, by the way, in case you're wondering. That part is pretty much, unanimous. And 14:2 says, and to his servants, wait a minute, let's back up here. At that time, Herod heard the report about Jesus and said to his servants, Jesus' servants, I would think, or maybe his own. It's hard to tell here. Let's see. This is John the Baptist. He is risen from the dead, and therefore these powers are at work in him. And this is why Herod would think that there's something amiss here, because Herod had laid hold of John and bound him and put him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. Philip was still alive, in case you're wondering. A little tidbit there. Because John said to him, it is not lawful for you to have her. Because they were still bound by Torah. You were not allowed to do that, and I'm pretty sure even under Roman law that probably wasn't allowed. Making sure my dog's got a bone and not something that I need to pay for later. And although he wanted Herod, although Herod wanted to put him to death, he feared the multitude because they counted him as a prophet, as he was, because he had been teaching for a while, and a lot of people had been following him, including probably the majority of the disciples. So 4:16 says, but when Herod's birthday was celebrated, and the daughter of Herodias danced before them and pleased Herod, you have to think about the Ben-Hur movie. Okay, this is what we're looking at here. Here's a picture you should see in your little head. If you can get that picture in your head, that'll help you get you through this story we're going through. Therefore, he promised with an oath to grant her whatever she might ask. So she, having been prompted by her mother, said, give me John the Baptist's head here on a platter. Yeah, platter. Okay. And the king was sorry. Nevertheless, because of the oaths and because of those who sat with him, he commanded it to be given her. Now, he gave his word, and people were there to see it. And if he would have went back on his word, man, that would have not have been good. That would have shown him as being a man without honor, and that's not how you want to deal in a Middle Eastern culture. So he sent and had John beheaded in prison, and the head was brought on a platter and given to the girl, and she brought it to her mother. And then his disciples took away the body and buried it, and went and told Jesus. So this story really is kind of, let me bounce back over here just for a minute. Um, John fulfilled a role, and when John's role was done, then God let him go home. John lived a very hard life. John lived the life of a pauper. He lived out in the wilderness. They said his diet was locusts and wild honey, and he wore camel skin for clothing. It was a bare existence that he lived, and unfortunately, I know not everybody looks at it this way, but I would consider it a relief to get to go home at that point. See, we do see that early that John, after he already baptizes Jesus, and John was given a sign in the book of John. It recounts the story that there was a sign that he had been given when he started his ministry, that you're going to see this sign, and this is going to be the Redeemer. And so, well, John saw that sign, but then he ended up in prison. He's like, well, wait a minute, hang on here. Isaiah says that when the Messiah comes, that those that are in prison will be set, those that are captive will be set at liberty. Well, John sent a couple of disciples to Jesus, and he goes, hey, dude, what's up? Are you the one that's coming, or do we look for another? And so Jesus tells the disciples, he goes, well, go tell John all the stuff you saw. And then he starts quoting him the same passage, but he leaves off the last part. He leaves off the part that says those that are in prison will be set free, because you got to know. You got to put yourself in John's shoes. You got to know he wants out of jail. You got to know that he's like, hey, dude, you're supposed to be the Messiah. Did I get that wrong? Because they had a picture of a Messiah coming to set up rule and reign from Jerusalem. That's not what Jesus came to do this time. He did not come in that necessarily in that messianic role. He came as a suffering servant and came as a way to make atonement so that humanity would still be able to come into covenant and have a relationship with the creator of the universe. God always makes a way. The temple was destroyed in 70 AD where you were done. You were done. You know what I mean? They'd already lost the ark. We really don't know where, depending on who you ask, we really don't know where the Ark of the Covenant is at, which meant the Day of Atonement couldn't really be taken out because you couldn't really put the blood on the ark. So that was all done in figure for we don't know how long, at least the time of Jeremiah, because apparently he was the one that hit it. The best my memory. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because that happens traditionally quite a bit. But when we're dealing with Jesus and John here, this is the point to where Jesus really kind of steps into his own role, and those who follow John, in all likelihood, would have just picked up the mantle because of what John had already said about Jesus. Was this is the one who the I'm not worthy to tie this dude's shoes. And they heard that, and that passed among John's disciples. So I think at this point, that's when you're going to see these huge numbers. Like here, we got feeding 5,000 all at once. All at once, Jesus has this huge crowd following around him. So, I'm not trying to go too far out on a limb here, but I think they might be related. I could be wrong. It says, now, when Jesus heard it about John, he departed from there by boat to a deserted place by himself. Deserted mean like, there was nobody there. When the multitudes heard it, they followed him on foot from the cities. So that was any city that would have been close, or people, knowing, that, hey, oh, look who just showed up. Because I doubt he would have actually been necessarily by himself 100%. Uh, and when Jesus went out, he saw a great multitude. He already saw them; they were already gathering. And he's trying to get a break. He's trying. This is where he's headed. Whoop, 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 whoop. This is where he's headed. He's headed to a deserted place by himself. That's where he's headed. That's where he's wanting to go. But then he saw a great multitude, and he was moved with compassion on them, and healed their sick. And when it was evening, his disciples came to him. Not sure where they were. They probably were. By that time, they probably had look, everybody's already there. We might as well go along. Saying, look, man, this is a deserted place, and the hour is already late. Send the multitudes away, that they may go to the villages and buy themselves food, because they're not going to make it back home in time. So they just go to the local markets here. And Jesus said to them, they do not need to go away. You give them something to eat. It's like, what are you talking about, man? They're good, dude. They're good. Go ahead and feed them. And they said to him, now this was, Matthew's version doesn't necessarily recount the search that went about. But this is what they ended up with. It says, yeah, we only have the loaves, 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, bring them here to me. And then he commanded the multitudes to sit down on the grass. And he took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he blessed and broke and gave the loaves to the disciples, and the disciples gave to the multitude. So let's take a quick gander here at this word blessed. And he blessed. Oh my gosh, it looks like the word eulogy. Holy cow. Dig that. Doesn't that look like the word eulogy? That's not dark at all. To bless, to praise. To bless, to praise, consecrate. Okay, to bless. All right. All right, to bless. All of it says to bless, to speak well of, to invoke a benediction upon, to prosper. Now, one of the things that I was hoping it would bring out fairly quickly, but it's really not going to do it, is the idea that blessing something makes more of it than what it originally was. To cause to prosper, to bestow. Sorry about this. Sorry. I thought I had covered all the bases in this passage, but I really obviously hadn't. Yeah, so I can't give you solid backup from the references tools that we're working with here. I can't give you solid reference for this idea, but I do believe that the idea of blessing does imply that you are making more out of it than what there actually is. The idea of the prospering something to make it grow. So, what I was told many years ago, this is completely stupid and unrelated. What I was told many years ago was that you do not want to ask a blessing over your meal. You want to give thanks over your meal, because you don't want your food to grow any more than what you've already eaten. So that was a fat family thing. So I don't know, maybe nobody else has ever heard of that. But he blessed and he broke the loaves and gave the disciples, and disciples to the multitude, and they all ate and were filled. And they took up 12 baskets full of fragments that remained, in pieces probably. Now, those who had eaten were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. No way to know what this number would have been, depending on the time of year. I mean, I'm not sure. There are chronological gospels. They give it a date of the year for this, but obviously it wasn't near harvest time, or all these folks would not 5,000 men definitely would not have been out there. So now, after he had done this, after he'd done this miracle, he had fed 5,000. They collected all the fragments. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, and he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray, to do the thing he started to do before all this stuff happened. Now, when the evening came, he was there alone. Now, the boat was in the middle of the sea, tossed by waves, for the wind was contrary. Reads many furlongs away from the land, middle of the sea, many furlongs away from the land. Very nautical, the many furlongs. I got to say that. Tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. The wind was blowing one way, and they were trying to go another. Now, in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went to them walking on the sea. So let me see real quick if we can get an idea of what time the fourth watch is. A fourth watch is going to be broken up into chronological periods, I'm sure. What a time of night during which a guard was kept, period time which guard duty. 3 parts. Divided night was into 3 parts. So Israelites also had 3 watches at night. They adopted the Roman custom of dividing the night into 4 watches. Okay, so we're possibly dealing with splitting the night, darkness to sundown to sun up, into 4 watches. No more than 4 watches. All right, so it's the 4th watch, obviously. So this is right before sunup. And the time, the darkest time, the time right before sunup, which it's always darkest before the dawn, and that is what this watch is. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It's a ghost!" So clearly they knew what a disembodied spirit was, or they sure as flip wouldn't have called it a ghost. Let's check the interlinear and see what they call it for a ghost. It's probably just going to call it a spirit. A phantasma. I'm pretty sure I watched that movie. Spirit, specter, spirit. Yeah. Wow. But that's it. Spirit or specter. Okay. An apparition. That's used, and then this is showing you other Greek writings that also describe it. So that's why you see that, like, because it's comparing Greek to Greek, and they use other great Greek writings to establish the usage of the words. So because you're having to define ideas, not necessarily one-for-one translation. So that's not our point, because we're moving on down the road. It says, but immediately Jesus spoke to them, saying, "Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid." And Peter said, now this is just an odd response, but Peter answered him and said, "Lord, Master, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." Because apparently we all know spirits don't speak. So maybe that was the test that we're going for here. And he said, "Come on out, Peter." And when Peter had come down out of the boat, because it would have been, a little high in the water, and walked on the water to go to Jesus, and when Peter had come down out of the boat, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind was boisterous, that when we saw the wind was boisterous, maybe he could just saw the wind. Who cares? Yeah, he saw the wind and the waves. He was afraid and began to sink, and cried out, "Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught him and said to him, "Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt?" Now, this picture, I want to make sure that you guys kind of let's not read intent into what is being said here. Look how close they are. And Jesus just stretched out his hand. He didn't step towards him. He just stretched out his hand and he caught him. And this is a teacher to his student. And this is actually someone who loves him enough to give up his life to make sure that he can be part of the kingdom. And this is, I would say this as a father to his young child, "Oh, you of little faith." Or, "Why don't you trust me? Why do you doubt?" I mean, look at the experience that Peter was going through, and Jesus is like, "You're blowing it, dude," you know. But when they got in the boat, the wind ceased. Now, I don't know if Jesus did that miraculously or if they did that on its own, because my understanding is on the sea, the lake that they're on, the Sea of Galilee that they're on, that storms literally pop up and drop off like you're going on a heartbeat monitor. It's like wind, no wind, wind, no wind. And then verse 14:33 says, "Then those who were in the boat came and worshipped him, saying, 'Truly, you are the Son of God.'" We've talked about this a couple times. When you see this title, the Son of God, that is the Messiah. You are the Redeemer. But you also have to remember that all of these people are looking for the conquering king. That's who all these people are looking for, is conquering king. And so when they say they worshiped him, they showed him reverence. They showed him honor. Now that might have came forward in one form or another, not necessarily in what we would picture as falling down on the ground and bowing to him, but they came and said, they trumpeted what they considered truth, truly, because they wouldn't have said truly, because that means of the truth. This is what I'm saying is of a truth. You are the Son of God. And so Jesus, while he was there, we'll go ahead and just wrap this up and call this a day. It says, "Many touched him and are made well. And when they crossed over, they came to the land of the Gennesaret." And let's see what they have, the other spelling. And they reads, "came to the land at." Okay. All right, close enough. And when the men of that place recognized him, they sent out into all that surrounding region and brought to him all who were sick and begged him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched it were made perfectly well. So we already have this established. So I know this may be something that's a little odd for some people raised in normal churches, is when you see the idea of a prayer clause and prayer shawls and things like this. Guys who are wearing tassels, girls wearing tassels, the zeet wearing that kind of thing. It seems very odd for some people, but I want you to realize that what you're seeing is this. And so Jesus, he's in the area, and they recognize him, and plus probably the crowd that was with him. And they sent out to all the surrounding region. They literally noised it abroad, and they brought to him all who were sick and begged him. And they pleaded with him that they might only touch the hem of his garment, and as many as touched it were made perfectly well. They didn't need his full attention. This is what they're saying. I just want to touch the hem of your garment. And we see this again with the woman with the issue of blood, that this information must have been commonly known, because it says they. This is not one situation. They knew, we're bringing the sick to you because we know that all they need to do is touch the hem of the garment, which is his tassels. That's his tzitzits. That's the things that you see on a lot of rabbinic Jews. The white strings hanging down, and for Messianics, it's a white and blue cords hanging down. That you will see. This is what they're talking about. The hem of his garment is his tzitzit. That is his wings. That's the healing in his wings. That's the healing in his garment. That's what they're talking about there. It was the outermost garment, and that's what it was referred to as. And so you're seeing here and when we see this, when we see people who are modern believers, they are modern Christian believers who believe the New Testament and affirm the things that it teaches, but we see them partaking in these kind of things. It seems super odd and somehow like we have been Judaized, but I'm like, no, that is what is commanded by the Father. And no, I don't have to do it, but I do it because I know he likes it. He asked his people to do it originally. So why is it wrong when I do what he originally asked his people to do? And I do it out of the fact that I know it's what he likes. My diet is what he likes. It's irrelevant what I like, and it's irrelevant whether I can. We're under grace now, brother. Yeah, we are. We are under grace, and I don't doubt that whatsoever. But let me give you the scenario that I give everyone whenever it comes to any topics like this. If you're in a relationship with someone and your tendency is to leave the cap off the toothpaste, but you know that they want you to put the cap on the toothpaste. But you leave the cap off the toothpaste and you get told a couple times that, yeah, you need to hey, Jack, you need to get that freaking cap back on that toothpaste because there's going to be consequences. And then you pay the consequences and then you learn your lesson. And then one day, because you've been keeping the cap on the toothpaste, you accidentally leave it off. And they go, you know what? I've got a new way to look at that, and I'm just going to go ahead and let that slide. Now, I really want you to do it, but if you don't do it, I'm not going to climb up your frame anymore. Now, what do? Do you go back to leaving the cap off the toothpaste? Is that what you do? You know you're under grace. Your spouse, your partner, has given you grace on this thing. They're giving you a pass on it, but you know they don't like it. So do you keep doing it? Or do you stop doing it because you love them and you know it's what they really want? So if that makes me a bad person, I don't know what to tell you. I do know to tell you, suck it. I'm sorry, you don't want to go toe to toe with Scripture with this on me because I taught the opposite of this for 20 years. And a lot of people, when they come and they talk to people who believe that the Bible still applies to us, they often forget that we used to teach what they believe. I taught what you believe. I just don't believe it anymore. And so that's why I do these studies. This is why I don't believe it. It wasn't because somebody came and told it to me. It's because I decided to actually start reading the Bible and taking it at His word. And I take God at His word. And when it agrees with what most people believe, then woo, that's awesome. That's a great thing. But when it doesn't, I'm going to stick with God. Who do we obey? Do we obey man, which is denominationalism? Do we obey man or do we obey God? Do we obey what our grandparents did, even though it was good and it laid the foundation for what I am now? But, he didn't hang on the cross for me, and He would tell you the same thing. And that's a freaking fact. And He'd tell you that in a heartbeat. You follow God. That's who you follow. So, on that note, if I've thoroughly offended you, please leave lots of comments. Because YouTube doesn't care if you love it or hate it, just as long as you interact. I mean, I care because I don't want to make you mad, but I would like to come to at least an agreement, even if that's an agreement to disagree. And if this is content you enjoy, if this is content that you enjoy, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. I do appreciate it. It does help grow the ministry, and I would consider it a personal favor. So, and before we get out of here, you know how this rolls. Read and pray every day will absolutely change your life. It will draw you closer to the Father. It will get you closer to His Son, and it will make His Word come alive in your life. I absolutely promise you. If you will get your heart and mind focused on Him, He will speak to you. I swear He will. I swear. Well, I don't want to say that because some people get offended when you say that. So I affirm to you that He will do it. All right. Love you guys. Read and pray every day. See you tomorrow night, 6 o'clock. Love you guys.